Y'all ready for history?
Get started.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hello, everyone.
To the Pro Audio Suite, thanks to RØDE microphones.
These guys are professional. They're motivated.
Introducing Robert Marshall from Source Elements and Someone Audio Post, Chicago. Darren Robbo Robertson from Voodoo Radio Imaging, Sydney. Tech to the VO stars, George the Tech Whittam from LA. And me, Andrew Peters, voiceover talent and home studio guy.
Line up, ladies!
Here we go.
Welcome to another Pro Audio Suite. Don't forget our Patreon address if you'd like to help us out with $1 here or $1 there. It is patreon.com/Pro Audio Suite.
That's it.
You can find the links there if you want to help us out.
Indeed. I was just going to say we've made a little change. There's some premium content now for our Patreon fans.
Ooh.
Yes. And
Did we put the naked pictures up?
Yeah, of you.
That's right. And edits of episodes that you won't hear unless you're a Patreon fan, like the extended mixes.
No, Robert, we're trying to get people to sign on, not run away.
Right.
All the bits that we cut out with. Yes.
Yes, indeed.
Dear. Now, this is going to be a bit of a serious episode, but it may change.
Sometimes
Normally does.
we have to do that.
Yeah.
We have to make up for last time. For the last 2 weeks ago.
No, I've removed the 41.6, so we're all good
Right.
in that
Okay.
area.
Well, I'm pretty sure it was Andrew's flatulence that's contributed to the predicament we're in now with the UN and the whole world.
All right, thanks.
Yeah,
now
good,
you bring
good.
it around. Well done.
Yeah, excellent. Well, the UN announced just recently, the IPCC, which is the Intercontinental Panel on Climate Change, they've announced a code RØDE. And I think, without going into too much detail, it's getting to a tipping point where we can't reverse climate change, which is freaking scary, to say the least. So there's a saying, if not me, who? So I think it's a case of time for me to start doing things. And I thought it'd be a really good opportunity for us to talk about the way we work and how we can actually change just a small thing that's going to have a big impact. I think it's got to the point where if you are a talent, you have a home studio, which you should have anyway, that you actually get to a point in saying, I'm not going to get in a car anymore. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I think you're
Along
right.
with not doing cigarette commercials.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. I totally agree with you. But I think for that to work, it's actually got to start a step before that. I think it's actually got to start at the client level where they step up and say, well, we're prepared to do that now. We've had, a year and a half of COVID and we know that it works and we know that there's no difference in doing it that way from actually having talent attend the session. So I think that one probably requires a change in approach from clients and stuff, doesn't it? I mean, if everybody puts their foot down and says, we're not going anywhere, then it works. But if you've got, some who will and some who won't, then are we just handing those who won't more work? I don't know.
There's been a few studios that have said, we want people to come back in. End of. That's it. Which I think is very short-sighted.
Well, there's been talent. There's been talent who wants to come back in more than clients, is what I've found. They're tired of dealing with their neighbor's leaf blower and stuff like that. I'll say this. I do have the solution. And it goes like this. So spell no way.
NOWAY.
Now take the F out of it.
Uh-huh.
There's no F in way.
Yeah.
But I don't see. I'm still puzzled. I still don't see what the issue is from people working remotely. I don't get it.
Well,
I know some people are technophobes and that freaks them out. But
I think it varies dramatically with the production workflows that are like so incredibly like even traditional, like commercial clearly can be done remotely. Clearly. I mean, the talent can be anywhere.
Anything not reading to picture is like a no-brainer.
Right. And the client can be in their location and they're comfortable at home or sitting in their boardroom, whatever. But the more like the stuff that's done ensemble is still very hard to do well and still have the same kind of interactiveness remotely as it has been done. But that is still such a small niche.
It's still
what's recorded.
Possible though.
It's possible, but it's definitely not the same for the talent. It's a very different thing for the talent.
Well, there's some advantages. There's actually some advantages as well. So we've got some clients that are running 14 simultaneous talent, all in separate places geographically, recording in an ensemble for like
looping,
usually animated. No, for animated productions mainly.
Yeah.
But it's possible to do somewhat similar things for looping. But the advantage actually is that now everybody is on a separate track and there's no bleed from the mic that's previously was 2 feet to your left.
Yeah,
and you don't get
exactly.
any of that weird phasing stuff that happens when you have a whole bunch of mics in the room at the same time.
So yeah, that's
there's actually some advantages.
I didn't know that was actually a thing. So people are still recording ensemble all in one room with a bunch of microphones standing within a few feet of each other? Like that's a thing?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
Catching COVID. Yep.
Yeah, I mean that's a phasing, cancellation, blah 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 nightmare. That's not easy to do. That's not easy to deal with in the mix.
Yeah, or maybe they have a few rooms to separate people with.
Yeah.
But what studio has 14 separate isolation booths?
No, none. I mean, I've seen some clips online where they have like a barricade between people or like a plexiglass shield between. Yeah, gobo, right? Yeah, but it's still
and that goes a long way. I'm not saying that doesn't certainly work, but it's not that you can't do it. And the one thing that you lose in that workflow is you do get a little bit of latency, but the reality is it's all edited anyways. Yeah. So the comedic timing is still basically there, but there's obviously latency with the internet. So
it's so funny. I mean, I'm just sitting here poking at my inner email because I have ADD, right? So I can't just listen to you guys. And the email I'm reading now,
yes.
The email I'm reading right now is: we are a radio theater company building out a studio for between 8 and 10 actors. We need help in selecting the right microphones and equipment so that we can record a radio show live to tape with the actors performing off of each other, with multi-track recording of each of the performances ending up as ISO tracks in Adobe Audition with no bleed from the other actors. That's literally the email I just opened.
That's bizarre.
I mean, isn't that weird?
Yeah.
So the answer is don't build a studio.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right.
If you're radio
Save
theater,
on the lumber.
Yeah, you don't need a theater. It's theater of the mind.
Right.
It's all in
cut
your
another
ear.
tree down that's going to breathe some oxygen into the world.
Yep.
Did you guys hear some of those clips? When we were talking about radio drama, I guess it's called a radio drama. It's a podcast.
But
it's mixed
it's like podcast dramas.
Yeah, but it's mixed in Atmos. Did you guys hear any
it's
of
coming
that?
up. Yeah, that stuff is coming up more and more.
Oh my
That's
God.
the right-left game, right? Is that the one you're talking about?
Is that what's called left-right or right-left game? I can't remember.
Right-left, I think. Yeah, one
and
of those.
the right-left game. Oh my God. Like,
Well, the funny thing
it's
is
incredible.
I sent you an email when you sent me that, and I was talking to an actor mate of mine who's back in Sydney at the moment, and I said about this, radio play thing, it's, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, oh, you mean the right-left game? And I went, yeah, how do you know about that? He goes, because I was in the first series. I'm like, what? And we're actually working together on doing exactly that, doing radio plays in 3D.
Well, it's just, and this is all clearly recorded remotely, right? Because I mean, every actor is in completely separate. There's 100% isolation.
Yeah,
they have absolute and complete control over the mix and in the environment in post. If they were in one space, it would be impossible to recreate this without that level of isolation.
Well, I think he went in, from what he told me, and I didn't go too deep into it, but I think he just went in on his own and did his lines.
Yes, okay. So it wasn't done in an ensemble. It was more like a video game where everybody records their lines.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But we've had other podcast dramas that are doing a whole bunch of stuff remotely. And these are, it's not even traveling in your car. It's things that people were getting in jet airplanes and flying for previously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just not entirely necessary anymore. And you do have a slight hit in your workflow, maybe. But honestly, the only thing I can think of is latency and can you properly get that other person set up? It's like shipping them a microphone and a pair of headphones and making sure they have a decent internet connection. You can pretty much get it to happen, and they don't have to build the booth out.
Yeah.
Robbo knows that you can take a lot of garbage audio and make it sound good. And
just work with Robert every week. Yeah.
But, well, just for instance, talking about working remotely, I'm down the coast out of Melbourne. Robbo's in the suburbs out of Sydney. George, you're in LA. And
I'm in the middle of Indiana.
Mm-hmm. With the grizzly bears, is that right?
Well, the mosquitoes, but yeah, on some pretty bad internet, as you know.
Well, then throw into the mix that we often have guests from the UK and Europe. So,
Yep.
There you go. Pretty much covers the globe.
Exactly. Yep. And, we can interact.
We many times had like 3 continents going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
totally.
3 continents, for sure.
Absolutely.
It was like the session that we did, Robert, from here with Mike in London and you in Chicago. Same thing. And working to pictures.
Oh, yeah, totally. With Somerset.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that was sync to picture.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm sure there's probably people listening to this thinking, yeah, but what about the fact that if you build a home studio, you're using all that material, you're buying your own microphone where a studio would have 3. Now 50 people have got a microphone each, so there's 50, they've got to be manufactured. You're running power because you've got computers and screens and preamps and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so, it is a tricky one.
It's not
but
cut and dried.
That's where, you've got to say, okay, I'm prepared to pay a little bit more.
Right.
Which to me is ridiculous anyway. I don't understand why it costs me more to run green power when it costs less to produce it. But that's the case anyway. But yeah, like us, my wife and I said, you know what, screw it. Yes, it's a little bit more, but we're talking about our kids' future here. 5 years isn't a long time,
exactly.
guys. Not long at all.
No, it's not. And the other thing is, like, once again, buy one thing, buy one good thing. Don't buy 10 shit things.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah.
If you're going to buy a microphone, buy a good one and keep it for life. Keep it for your whole career.
I'll throw this out there, which is interesting. Thomas Dolby, did you know that he did one of his albums completely and totally off the grid?
No, that's cool.
Very cool.
Yeah. No.
Zero power from the power company or anything. It was completely solar and wind or whatever the hell he figured out because he's like a mad genius.
Yeah,
and the whole album
awesome.
was produced without any produced power.
Yeah, I love Thomas Dolby.
Interesting. I keep sending him emails, I've got his email address. I keep asking him to come on the podcast and he keeps saying, I'm not doing interviews at the moment. That's all I get back from him.
Oh, he actually replies?
Yeah.
It's not like an auto-response or something, or his PR person?
No, it's him. No, it's definitely him.
Oh, okay.
I was surprised when it came back because I sent one to his website and it came back from him. So,
Far out.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm looking right now to see what album that
with
was.
spam.
Thomas, there's a website, there's a story called Thomas Dolby's Very Different View of Progress, which is kind of cool. I want to read this because it definitely paints a picture of like what he considers progress is not all about advancement of technology in this, what Moore's Law is. Everything doubles in
speed
performance, it's like
every 2 years.
It's not all about Moore's Law. It's not all about getting faster or cheaper all the time,
Well, sometimes more is
exactly.
less.
Yeah. It says in the article, Dolby's frustration with Moore's Law involves an implicit assumption that 4 is better than 2. 8 is better than 4. That's the problem. Exactly like you said earlier. It's exactly what you were implying earlier, Robert. You're like, we assume that we just have to have a faster computer to get the job done. That what we have isn't going to work because what we have hasn't been erased lately. Back in the early days of Windows, I would erase my drive every freaking year. It was just normal. I would format it and start over, because that's how I knew I was going to keep my computer running well. And
honestly, it's like there's like Pro Tool systems out there and brand new HDX, DSP, this and that, and Pro Tools HD system from 2010 or earlier, whenever it came out, 2005.
2007, I think.
Yeah,
or 5,
that's
6,
like a
maybe.
kick-ass system, incredibly capable, and still just as capable as it was back then.
Yeah, it does 24 and 192, right?
Yeah, 24 or 192, actually in some respects is just as good.
Right.
It doesn't have, the only thing you can say is it doesn't have faster than real-time bounce, and really that was a decision.
Yeah.
That it's totally capable.
But let's be brutally honest. For most of our listeners, they could be recording on a G5 Mac with a 001 or even an M box, the original M box, just to record voiceover. You don't need the latest Mac Pro for $15,000 and a massive Pro Tools rig. That's ridiculous.
That's what I'm saying. Because when you buy that new Mac Pro, there's two things. You're putting another computer. I mean, I'm sure you're using it and you're not completely throwing your computer away, but you're increasing the likelihood that there's another computer in a landfill eventually. You're making them produce another computer. There's all kinds of heavy metals and all kinds of stuff that goes into making a computer that is not good for the world. And did that other computer fail you completely? And if it did, maybe there's a reason why. Like George said, like you just need to reinstall the operating system. Maybe buy a new chip of RAM.
Yeah, like 3/4 of the problems people, I don't know if there's a statistic on this, but I bet like 9/10 of the reason people buy a new computer is because the one they have is getting slow. And it's not getting slow because it's getting tired and the memory isn't running like it used to and needs an oil change. No, it just needs to be wiped out.
Gasket.
Yeah. Computers don't work that way. Like maybe the power supply will fail. Yeah. Right. And won't turn on.
Or a RAM chip can get stupid.
A RAM chip can go bad. Right. Yeah. But and I gotta say, I love my Mac M1 machine. Right. And this is the problem. Right. I love it. It's amazing. But another thing, when I talked about this briefly on my show the other week, if the M1's storage, the solid state storage, which is on chip, it's on die, right? They call it a SoC or system on a chip.
Is it soldered onto the board? Is it like surface?
It's not soldered on the board. It's in the SoC. I mean, it's all one thing. If that fails, which is not that likely, because when's the last time you had an iPhone like just fail? Right? Like how often? That does not happen very often. But if that does fail, you cannot boot the device, right? It's bricked. Like an older Mac, you could plug in a hard drive externally and boot from the external drive.
Oh, there's no booting off of an external drive with an M1 machine?
Right, because there's no firmware, quote unquote.
Moving parts.
It's all on the chip. So yeah, I read about that recently. That somebody shared that article with me. And I was like, progress.
Yeah.
Like, I just sort of shook my head.
Progress, though?
Yeah, it's like,
not.
It's progress in terms of technology, Moore's Law, all of that stuff. And it's remarkably fast and it's remarkably quiet and it uses extremely small amount of electricity, which is good for the planet. I mean, my Mac Mini uses like 10 or 11 watts and the one it replaced used 120 watts. To do the same work. Mm-hmm. It does more work for 1/10 power. So it's using less power. There's no doubt about it. And that's good. But it's still another disposable piece of tech because it has a zero repairability score. You cannot repair it.
It's one of those things. If you think about electric cars, and everyone's like, oh, because I drive an electric car, now I'm okay to drive all over the place. You're still expending energy. You're still using batteries up that have horrible chemicals in them.
Yeah, which have a lifespan. They're good for 10 years maybe, tops.
Right, yeah. and there's arguments that like the extraction and the creation of those batteries is just as bad for the environment as other means of producing energy. So you're still better off not blowing energy, essentially.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of just not buying more crap, not fueling the machine, and less is more.
It's hard to do when you're a technologist. It's hard to do when you love technology. I listen to a lot of tech shows, and this is what they talk about a lot, is like, here's the newest thing, and then here's the other side of the coin. We should not keep buying all these new things. They constantly battle with this problem.
If there was a giant recession, depression, maybe we would start spending less energy.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
Maybe.
Yeah, true.
I just know that a year ago, during the peak of COVID here in LA, the skies were never clear. I remember hearing about in different countries like Iran, where my girlfriend is now, there's smog problems there. And there's cities in the country, in the world, where they didn't ever see the mountains, and then they could. I mean, that's amazing.
Is alcohol bad for the environment?
No.
Well, it burns pretty clean. I know that much.
Yeah.
I'm not just thinking about consumption on my behalf.
Drink enough of it and you'll make a lot of compost when you're dead.
Well, that was fun. Is it over?
The Pro Audio Suite recorded using Rode NTG5s and Source Connect. Edited by Andrew Peters and mixed by Voodoo Radio Imaging. With tech support from George the Tech Witter. Help us share the show with more people and get your hands on exclusive content by contributing to our Patreon page. See patreon.com/Pro Audio Suite. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and join in the conversation on our Facebook group. To leave a comment, suggest a topic, or just say g'day, drop us a note at our website, proaudiosuite.com.